It is all yours. We'll call our workshop to order and let the record show that all 7 board members are here.
Yes, thank you.
Rosa.
Board members, as you know, our budget is large, it's complex, and it takes a lot of time and effort to make sure that we keep up with all the changes in Tallahassee, make sure that the board and the board's committee, finance committee, budget committee, pardon me, are well aware of all these processes. We've been walking through this process over several months, and we're not finished yet. We still have some time to go, but this evening, Mr. Burke and team will be providing us an update. Mr. Burke?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Faith Schulstrom, as you know, is the chair of your Budget Advisory Committee. She had hoped to be here today, but she had something unexpected come up, another commitment, and she had to, she'll hope to catch up with us next time. Maybe she'll be back for the final budget adoption in September. But you will find the full committees, each year, part of the charge of the Budget Advisory Committee is to produce a report out to the board for the budget, and the full report is attached to your agenda. Ms. Schulstrom asked that I start the meeting today by just highlighting some of the key recommendations coming from the committee this year. So I'm going to read those to you, and then we'll get to our presentation. First, the Budget Advisory Committee recommended that any recurring savings identified should be directed towards employee raises, and we're going to get into that more later, but we were limited in what we were able to do with the budget that we got from the state, and if we are able to identify any more money going forward as we work towards final adoption, the committee suggests that we direct that to the salary reserve. The committee noted that departments comprise 9% of our total budget, but wanted to note that of that 9%, nearly half of the department budgets are attributed to transportation and facility maintenance and school police. And we did go through a line item department budget review with Dr. Vosa earlier this year. The Budget Advisory Committee is urging continuing attention to school staffing allocations, proactive implementation of technology solutions such as the SIS system, virtual learning opportunities, and things of the sort. They're recommending innovative piloting of staffing and school day models, targeted pursuit of new grant opportunities outside of state and federal entitlement grants. The committee encourages the superintendent to work with other school district superintendents in considerations of ways to challenge House Bill 7069, and I know that that's on our agenda for later this evening. And then due to the lack of state funding and support, the committee recommends that the superintendent seek to explore increasing the current .25 mil referendum, which funds over 600 fine arts teachers, to include necessary employee salary improvements. The committee also supports moving the superintendent's proposed budget as presented to them earlier. Now, the committee reviewed the budget back in June. There have been some changes which we're going to highlight with the board this afternoon, and we are also sending that information. It's been sent to the Budget Advisory Committee to kind of keep them up to date. The changes are relatively minor, but there is that just footnote there that they reviewed the budget up to a certain point, and we've had to make a few changes since our last meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. You guys, this first slide on the legislative session, I think the board's pretty well aware of what's played out between the regular session and then the special session, and the governor signing House Bill 7069 into law. So I don't think we need to spend a lot of time here. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Heather Knust, our budget director, and then Leanne Evans, our treasurer, is also going to help. And between the two of them, they're going to take you through what our budget will be for next year. It's actually, we're going to be up to $2.877 billion. That's a lot of that growth. We were about $2.5 billion last year. Most of that growth is attributed to the capital budget now, that with the sales tax passing and also with some of the borrowing and some of the projects we want to expedite earlier in the capital plan, that is really, that's where the big growth is in our district budget overall. So Ms. Knust, why don't you take it away?
Right. With that, we really want to focus on today what were the changes since we last met back in May. And there are always variables when we're building the school district budget. And one of the more significant variables that we have is the Palm Beach County tax roll. And the state forecasts the tax roll, but the county is the one who certifies it. And they do that calculation independent of each other. And normally what we see is an increase from the state forecast when the county certifies the tax roll in July. As you can see in FY17, we had nearly a $2 billion increase in our property tax roll from the state forecast to the final certified county tax roll, which brought in an additional $4.7 million over that discretionary millage levy. But in FY18, we actually had the reverse, where the certified tax roll from the county came in a little over $2 billion less than what the state had forecasted, resulting in $5 million less in revenue being generated from that discretionary millage. There was a slight increase from the preliminary estimate that the county provided in June to the final certification in July, which did increase the revenue slightly, but overall there was a significant decrease from the state forecast to the county certified tax roll. So the other changes that we had were related to House Bill 7069. Staff has now had time to assess what that impact is going to be to the district. By passing through having to share the required capital outlay millage dollars, we estimate that to be about a $10 million impact. That is still dependent on the number of eligible charter schools that we have. In addition to that, there was the increased restrictions on the Title I set-asides. In order to hold the district schools harmless for one additional year, the general fund is going to pick up $1.25 million in additional program costs from Title I. And since we last met, we've also received the updated list of the low 300 schools. There were 6 schools that came off the list, but the number of schools that increased, the net increase in the total of low 300 schools was 10. So we went up to 27 total schools that are eligible for low 300 extended day. And the cost of that additional 30 minutes is $2.5 million for those 10 additional schools. So when you take into account that slight increase in revenue that we did have between the preliminary certified tax roll and the final certified tax roll from the county, offset against the impact from Title I as well as the low 300 schools, we had to reduce the budget by $3.3 million. And the way that we did that is we offset that against the salary reserve, because that's the only number within the budget this year that we had to work with to adjust. But when you're looking at the employee salary reserve, there's a lot more to the employee salary incentives than just the district set aside. So in House Bill 7069, they did expand the Best and Brightest program for teachers, and we were able to estimate what we think our portion will be of the teachers in Palm Beach County will receive related to the expansion of that program. So we looked at the number of Best and Brightest teachers that qualified in FY17, as well as the number of highly effective and effective teachers, and we estimate that approximately $14.5 million will be going to Palm Beach County School District teachers.
Just want to point out the Best and Brightest program, the language is very specific in House Bill 7069 that there's 3 tiers of the bonus, and then there's also a principal bonus component that's new for this year. And the biggest bonus is a $6,000 bonus, and that a dollar amount is fixed for those teachers that are highly effective and they satisfy the SAT scores, the college entrance exam scores. And then there's a $1,200 bonus for teachers that are highly effective, and it must be $1,200. And then the language is on the bonus for effective teachers, it reads that it's up to $800. And depending on how that shakes out with the number of effective and highly effective teachers, you could see that $800 bonus be prorated down. They've only got $233 million to work with. And there is some concern that now that the $1,200 is a guaranteed for the highly effective, we could see more highly effective teachers this year and deplete that bonus money, right? So you've got the $6,000 is supposed to be a guarantee, the $1,200 is a guarantee, and then the $800 is a little bit in jeopardy because it's as far as the money will go. The principals are eligible for, if they're in a Title I school, they're eligible for a $5,000 bonus, and if they're in a regular school, it's up to a $4,000 bonus. Those dollars are also fixed. There was no the amount set, and that money will come off the top as well. And then for those principals, their bonuses are based on the number of best and brightest teachers they have on their faculty compared to other schools across the state. So to the extent that the principals hired teachers with good SAT scores, that's what's going to determine their bonus eligibility, which seems a little unscientific, but I just wanted to kind of point that out, that the $233 million may not go far enough to completely fund those $800 bonuses for effective teachers.
The other thing I want to add, and we appreciate any dollars that are steered toward teacher bonuses, but I think what I'm hearing from the teachers, board members, is that these are one-time dollars. They're not going to impact, they're not recurring, they're not going to impact retirement, et cetera. So I don't think anybody would turn down the $800 to $1,200 as a teacher, but what I'm hearing from staff is that they're concerned about it not being recurring, and that the fact that it says up to 800, which means it could be lower than that. I just don't know. We don't know yet.
Erica.
I'm sorry I didn't ask this earlier, but I know that we had heard that Broward was able to give up to 3 to 5%. Do you have any idea how they did that? Or are they claiming part of this best and brightest bonus as a part of that?
I'm going to probably have to get more details, but I think that goes back to their settlement for last year, right? I think.
Oh, is that what it is? That's where it comes from? Is their last year settlement?
Let me double check on that.
Okay, I can hear later. I'm just curious. Thanks.
Right. Mrs. Brill.
Thank you, and I'm glad we're taking some questions now, because sometimes I feel like in these workshops, if it was really a workshop, as you go through, we could ask a question, and I do have a question that goes back to slide number 3. So before we plow ahead, my question for you is that property values have increased, and I'm looking at where we had the increase of $4.7 million from the state to the county last year, and then we have the decrease of $5.1 million. But if you look at the state monies, those are up, and I just don't understand, why did we wind up with that kind of loss that we didn't anticipate? Can you explain that to us?
Certainly, yeah. What's the difference here is not that you're right in that the tax roll continues to grow. The difference is that when the state was building their budget and forecasting county by county, they expected Palm Beach County, the tax growth to be over 7%. It was they predicted 7.66% growth year over year in the tax base, and what really played out to be the true increase was a 6.47% increase in our tax base. Last year, we were pleasantly surprised when the tax increase, I think, went up just about 10%. So it slowed down a little bit.
So was this a follow-up question? Was this an error in our budgeting? Because it says the district budgeted revenue decreased 5.1. Did we over budget for what that was going to be?
No, we budgeted based on what the state had forecast. You know, as the state's building their budget, we get the Senate run, the House run, the governor's budget. All of those budgets were built on the EDR's forecast county by county. And, you know, this is something we could consider now going forward, because our experience for the past several years has been that typically we outperform the state projection. And we'd always kind of have this nice surprise. I would tell the board, hey, you know, this is one of those variables that's going to change. And for the last several years, I've been coming back to the board this time and saying, good news, we picked up $1 million or $2 million. We wanted to present this chart today to show you that, you know, there are some variables here that can a fairly minor change in the forecast to reality, and you can have a $5 million swing. So we just wanted to make sure we pointed that out to the board. But it's not to any fault of our own. It's just those forecasts at the state were a little over optimistic, and typically they usually undershoot the true number.
All right, so our district revenue increase this year, net of the pass-through to charter schools, is $43.6 million, which does seem like a significant number, but we have to look at just the increase in standard fixed operating costs. Why did we have such an increase? We are projected to have an increase in enrollment. So when you have an increase in enrollment, we have to allocate the staff to support that increase in enrollment. That's the biggest chunk of that increase in funding. We also had the increase that was approved by the state legislature and FRS. That's eating up $4 million, as well as the FPL approved rate hike. So those are things that are fixed off the top that there's nothing that we can do with. You know, in addition to the 10 additional schools identified as low 300, and also the impact of the House Bill 7069 with Title I. So that leaves $10.7 million of that for salary reserves. But there are still variables that may impact the budget for final adoption. We are working through the year-end fund balance for FY17. We are anticipating a slight increase, but we are working through right now, closing out the year. And then what is our actual enrollment going to be? Once we see the start of school, we go through count day. If we look at the past 2 years, our actual enrollment has outpaced our projection. And so with that, we can also see additional revenue in the district like we had this past year. So the total general fund budget is $1.85 billion. It's a total increase of about $70 million. $56 million of that is related just to the FEFP and the discretionary millage. You can see that district-operated schools are 63%. Charter schools are 10% of the district budget. Last year, they were 9%. The reason for the increase this year is primarily because of that increase in the capital outlay that we have to transfer to charter or pass through to charter schools. And we are maintaining our contingency reserve at 3%. So for all funds, the all funds is $2.877 billion, the bulk of which is the general fund, but a significant portion is now capital projects at 18%, and we do expect to see that to grow each year. The reason for that increase is we're starting to implement the projects on the voter-approved sales tax. We don't expect much changes within the special revenue fund other than the reduction that we had to deal with within Title I, the 7% reduction within Title I, and there was also a reduction in Title II of 15%. And so with that,
Can I ask a
Yep.
question? And these are suppose and if kind of questions. If the school district and other school districts make a decision to go forward with a challenge on 7069, and if a court issued an injunction that stayed implementation of the bill, specifically Title I and the capital outlay issues, what is the practical impact that it would have on us? When do we send that money to the charter schools at this point, not knowing what could happen? So what are all the ifs there, and what's the practical implications for us?
Well, in regards to the capital funding, the statute specific that we would pay the charters in February of 2018. So
Okay.
if there was some type of injunction.
Because
that
they
could-
have to meet certain criteria and stuff during that, and the enrollment issues and stuff.
The state's going to calculate that number for us as well. They're going to look at, they're going to look at the eligible charter schools. They're going to back out there's that provision that we can back out the debt that was existing as of March 2017, and they'll calculate that number that goes out to charters. It could be anywhere from like $8 to $10 million. So the potential for litigation could impact that before we actually have to shell out the money. With Title I,
and that would be the start of school for Title I, is normally they send the allocations out early in the school year.
So that could always be adjusted at some point in time.
well, we're moving forward with implementing the law because it was effective July 1. So we met earlier today with Dr. Vosa, Dr. Christensen, and we took the Title I elementary school principals through some of those changes. While there's an impact at the district level here to kind of keep everything we had, Ms. Knus mentioned it's going to cost us about $1.25 million. Title I was smart in that they were prepared for this, and they had some fund balance to fall back on, and there's a significant roll forward that's allowing us to really keep things intact for one more year if the law doesn't change. And the schools, as a result, are actually going to get more funds per school because you had to do away with some of the district-wide programs, and the intent of the law was to make sure it restricted our ability to do district-wide services and pay each charter on a per-student basis. So when you disband some of that, it actually ends up in putting more money into all the schools. But we have less flexibility and less money at a district level to be strategic with our resources and really, concentrate where address the equity issues.
How does our budget planning go related to the constitutional amendment that could be on the ballot in next year related to a change in the homestead exemption? Are we making plans on any impact that has at this point?
Well, we're fortunate in that the school districts are exempt from that the way it's currently proposed. There could be some indirect impact, right? If the counties and cities say, you know, due to this hardship, we're no longer able to provide this type of support for, you know, school crossing guards or parks and recreation or whatever. So it's probably something we need to start thinking about. But we're not going to have that full dramatic impact of losing that chunk of the tax base.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk about the capital budget. And the FY18 budget is balanced, and we're doing a 10-year capital plan again, and it's almost complete, and we'll get that to you as soon as possible. Total budget for this year in capital is $793 million, and you'll see for the first time in several years, there's a big slice of the pie going for construction. As we talked about on May 3rd, we're moving some construction projects up, and so you're seeing that reflected in the budget. The capital reserves have increased by over $200 million, and a lot of that is being managed by borrowing. We're going to be doing some short-term borrowing related to the sales tax, specifically on technology, and we had talked about doing that when we were talking about the referendum. We've also moved up the construction projects that we're planning to borrow for, so we're just doing that a little earlier. And we also dealt with the property values coming in less than state projections. That impacted the capital budget as well. So the construction projects, I know this is what everyone's anxious to see. These are the projects that will be funded in FY18. This is based on the discussion that happened with you on May 3rd. So we've added in the addition to Forest Hill High School. We've expedited the construction of Tripolo High School and the Sunset Palms Area Middle School. We also have moved up and expedited the Verdi and Washington Elementary Schools. They had design money in 18 only. Now we're funding the entire project in 18. South Area Transportation, we've moved the design money up. We've also moved the money that was set aside for the Gold Coast remodel. We're moving that to River Beach Prep, since that's where the students are going.
I just want to mention, we are moving the borrowing, so we're going to do all the borrowing up front for these projects. It doesn't mean they'll be completed in 18. It'll still take the normal course of construction, but it does allow us to get the borrowing underway. And then also the borrowing is subject. We can't go out and borrow the money until we obtain DOE's approval to add the capacity. So for like with Tripolo High School and then the new middle school PP in the Sunset Palms area, we'll be going to DOE in the fall with a new ed plant survey. And once we get approval on all that, we'll be clear to go ahead and issue the debt and get those monies so we can get started with building the schools.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Regarding the sales tax projects, some of the projects that were planned for FY18 are going to be, we're moving them temporarily into 19. We're setting the money in reserves within sales tax. So when you see the budget and it looks like reserves have gone up significantly, it's the sales tax money being set aside. The facilities folks are working with the new program management folks to decide which projects will go first and second and third. So while we have $33 million set in reserves, we're already talking with facilities. They may be moving that money around a little bit, so we'll keep you informed, and you'll see that, and ISOC will see that as well. We talked earlier about the $25 million that we've been borrowing for technology projects, and this we wanted to make sure we brought to you so you were aware of it. When we did the sales tax, we talked about classroom technology. That was going to be audio enhancement and installing overhead, the short throw projectors. And what the district is looking at, the technology teams are really spending a lot of time to determine what the best type of technology is. And they've determined that the flat panel interactive screens would be much more robust. They're newer, they're more flexible. That's where the trend is nationally. So they're looking to purchase those. They are easily moved, which is great for the schools. However, when you look at the definition of infrastructure in the sales tax statute, they no longer meet that definition. So we're working with our lobbyist and the county as well. We're going to ask for a change in the law to expand the definition of infrastructure in that statute to include technology. We're viewing that really as a glitch. When you build a building of any type, whether it's a school or any other public building, technology is a basic part of that. So the law just needs to be updated to include technology. So when we borrow the money for technology this year, the first year's principal and interest will not be able to be funded with sales tax. It'll fund with another funding source, and then we'll switch it back to sales tax as soon as that law change comes into place. And then I have one slide on the House Bill 7069, which we've already talked about, so I'm not going to belabor that. But over the 10-year window, we are expecting that to be an impact of $230 million on the capital budget if it's fully implemented.
Just our next steps. So on your regular board meeting agenda tonight, you'll see we've got the budget advertisements. Just yesterday, we got the final required local effort rate from FDOE. So we've updated our advertisements to reflect that. If the board approves them tonight, they'll run in the Palm Beach Post on Friday. And then they will alert the public that we're going to have a tentative budget adoption hearing, public hearing on a week from today on July 26th at 5:05 p.m. in the same room. And then, again, the final adoption is scheduled for September 6th. And that would be our last meeting on the FY18 budget. So, Mr. Shaw, well, that completes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions.
Right. Questions? Mrs. Brill.
Thank you, and I don't know if this is a crazy question, but with the sales tax projects and classroom technology, is there any opportunity for us to look at, or are we looking at iPads for to be used for textbooks, to be able to have the textbooks on iPads? Because I'm getting a lot of questions from my community about that.
With the sales tax proceeds, because it was done as a local government infrastructure surtax, there's limitations on what you can spend the money for. And they really have to be capital items that meet that definition. They need to have at least a 5-year lifespan. So devices are not a good fit for sales tax. We have done some planning where, because we now have the sales tax, that frees up some of the 1.5 mil capital revenue that can be used for devices. We are looking, this year, we're adding some more Google Chromebooks. We've had very good results with those, and the teachers and the students like them, and so we just, yes, go ahead.
Just as a follow-up to the superintendent, you know, we all know how fast technology is moving, and, you know, I think that the textbooks are really kind of being phased out. So whether it's Google, you know, the Google Chromebooks or the, you know, iPads, I think we really need to look to a shift, you know, to more technology for learning.
Mr. Burke, is based upon the any conversations that you've had, are there any efforts that we're making to explore partnerships with cities or the county related to any of the projects in the sales tax, that there may be joint use opportunities? Are we pursuing any of that?
No, I think we've both, you know, all the county's got their project list. We have ours. So no, I guess I don't have a real good answer there. I think we're aware of the work we're doing. There's been some ongoing discussion about how there's a shortage of sports fields, and that there's some interest, maybe that might be an area where we could partner, like where the county might chip in on some improvements to those facilities and help with the maintenance if they're going to have more use. But there's nothing really formal to a report. I just think that's one opportunity, maybe.
Any other questions?
Can I just jump back to Ms. Brill's question, though, because I think it's important. I'm not sure it came across in our presentation. The impact of House Bill 7069, so when we have to cut this $8 to $10 million out of the capital budget, that was not easy, because we've got our 10-year plan that we'd established. We've got our sales tax project list, and we wanted to protect all those. You know, we're not going to renege on any of those commitments. So when we had to pull that $10 million out, it did impact the technology budget. That's what took the biggest hit, and that's was disappointing, because that's where we want to work to that 1-to-1 ratio with the devices, and unfortunately that's a little bit in jeopardy. The other area is, you know, when we went to the voters with the sales tax, we kind of made the commitment that we were going to increase our annual investment in maintenance and preventative maintenance, and use more millage money to do maintenance, so that when we get to the end of 10 years, hopefully we're back in a position where we're able to keep up and we don't wind up with another backlog of deferred maintenance. And this potential loss of $230 million, that's the other place where it hits, because we're committed to the projects, we're committed to the new schools. So really, technology and maintenance is what suffers, and that's somewhat of a concern. If that House Bill 7069 remains in effect and we have charter growth, it could change the landscape in terms of our ability to keep up with the ongoing maintenance.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm the money that was transferred from Gold Coast to Riviera Beach Prep is in addition to the 14 million and change that was already designated for Riviera Beach Prep?
That's correct.
Okay, and do we have a timeline? Do we have a timeline on when we dig in dirt or knock things down or whatever we're going to do? Do we
We
have
don't have a date for the Riviera Beach Prep. There's plans to, to basically rebuild the facility now that it's housing both the students from Gold Coast. But I would have to follow up with Dr. Fenoy and his team. And we do have, our construction management partners now on board, ACOM, started July 1st. And I think there's some scheduling and planning work that needs to be done.
Okay.
So one of the things that we'll do, we'll come back to the school board on the north end in general, and this includes Mrs. McQuinn, your area as well. We need to be looking at North Transportation, in Lake Grove, the piece you just spoke of, Dr. Robinson, and any other outstanding issues. We'd like to bring it as a group, just like we did last time when we came to the board and said, look, we need to be more strategic about the way we use our buildings. Let's not go rebuilding a building that it may be more cost effective to knock it down and start over. So Dr. Fenoy and I ironically had this exact discussion today, and we'll be pulling together a group to do much like what Mike did, Mr. Burke did previously.
And Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. With the state funds for the Best and Brightest bonus for Palm Beach County teachers this coming year at $14.5 million, can you tell me how well we did last year with the funding there and how our teachers actually participated? I know the principals are included this time, but what did we do last year as far as participation rate with our teachers?
Ms. Kenny, do you recall? We had a pretty good participation. I think it was about $6 to $7 million that came in.
The total number of teachers that qualified for Best and Brightest in 17 was 461. And this is just an estimate, the 14.5 million, because we don't know who's going to actually qualify in FY18. So we used the information that we had available for this past year.
Can you just, I think it's a great question. Can we find out is this the second or third year that this is being offered? Do we know?
I think that we just went through our second year of it.
Okay, can we get a historical piece? I think what the question is are we going up? Are we sideways? Are we going down? Let's get that information to the whole board.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, is there a motion to adjourn the workshop? Motion by Mrs. Brill, second by Dr. Robinson. All in favor, all opposed. We stand adjourned, and we've got about 40 minutes before we start the next meeting, unless we get started early.